Part 1. The Discovery. My name is Rachel Matthews, and I'm 38 years old. If someone looked at my life on paper, they'd probably think I had everything figured out. A steady career in logistics management, a tidy little house on a quiet street where kids race their bikes until the street lights come on, and a fiancé, Matthew, who could charm his way through a hurricane and come out smiling. We'd been together for 7 years. 7 years of shared holidays, weekend getaways, and friends who called us the perfect couple. And for most of that time, I believed it too. Matthew was 36, a real estate agent with an easy smile and a disarming laugh. He remembered everyone's birthdays, flirted effortlessly with waiters, and somehow always got us free desserts at restaurants. People loved him. He was everything you'd expect in a partner, successful, charming, and attentive. But as perfect as Matthew seemed, things started to shift in ways I couldn't ignore. It all started with the wedding planning. Everything had been going smoothly, or so I thought. Then, last Thursday, we were finalizing the details, discussing the photographers, and their shot list. I was surprised when Matthew casually brought up Tommy, my best friend. Tommy is 33, a real man, with a story that's not pretty, but full of resilience. He'd been through a lot. A house fire at 16 that left him with burn scars all over his face and neck. I'd known Tommy since middle school, and while others might have been repelled by his scars, I only saw his strength, his loyalty, and his genuine heart. He had his own auto shop now, a loving wife, and 2 kids who adored him. But Matthew saw something different. So, about Tommy, he said, pulling me out of my thoughts. He can't be in the wedding photos. The scars will ruin the aesthetic. I blinked, thinking he was joking. What do you mean? Tommy's my best man. I know, but think about it, Rach. This is a wedding. We need everything to be perfect. The photos, the vibe, it's all part of the vision, he continued, almost casually. I stared at him, unsure if he was serious. You're telling me you want to exclude Tommy because of his scars? Matthew looked at me, his smile still in place, but there was something off about it. It's just the photos. We can't have him in the main shots. Maybe he can stand at the edge, or we can Photoshop him out. It's about having the perfect day. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No way. Tommy's not some accessory to be moved around for aesthetic reasons. He's my best friend, and if he can't be in the photos, then I don't know if I can marry you. Matthew looked taken aback. What? It's just photos. Don't be dramatic, Rach. No, this is who you really are, isn't it? You care more about the perfect image than about the people who matter. His face went cold, but the words were out, and I knew, in that moment, that I couldn't ignore the warning signs any longer. This wasn't just about Tommy. It was about the kind of person Matthew was. Someone who could throw away loyalty for the sake of an image. I stood up. You're right, I'll handle it. Matthew smiled, relieved, thinking I'd just calmed down. I knew you'd understand. But deep down, I knew there was nothing to understand. I had just seen Matthew's true colors. This wasn't about stress or wedding planning. It was about his lack of character. And I couldn't pretend that was okay anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every interaction between Matthew and Tommy in my head. All the times Matthew had been too busy for Tommy, how he'd always brushed him aside. Those little moments added up, the red flags that had been there all along. I was done pretending. Tomorrow, I'd talk to Tommy. Tomorrow, everything would change. Part 2. The Revelation. The next morning, I didn't waste any time. I drove straight to Tommy's shop. I knew it was risky, bringing it all up so soon, but I couldn't keep carrying this weight around anymore. When I pulled up, I could hear the loud music blasting from inside the shop, a familiar sound that had always made me feel at home. Tommy was under a car, his tools scattered around him like a scene from a mechanic's dream. "Tommy!" I called out as I stepped into the shop. He rolled out from under the car and stood up, wiping his hands on a rag, his eyes narrowing as he saw my face. "Who died?" he joked, though his tone shifted when he saw the seriousness on my face. "My relationship," I replied, voice barely above a whisper. His eyes went wide. "What happened?" I took a deep breath, my chest tightening. This wasn't something I wanted to say, but it had to be said. I told him everything, word for word. How Matthew had dismissed him for his scars. How he wanted me to replace him for the sake of a perfect wedding. How all of it had made me realize that the man I thought I was going to marry was not the person I thought he was. Tommy's face went through a whirlwind of emotions, hurt, anger, but also an unusual concern. He stepped closer, his voice soft but steady. "Bro, if you're telling me this to get me to step down as best man, I will. You don't have to do this for me. I don't want to cause any more trouble. No, Tommy. I shook my head. You're my best man. You're my brother. If anyone's getting replaced, it's not you. Tommy stared at me, his brow furrowing. What are you saying? I looked him in the eye and let the words fall from my lips like a heavy weight. I'm saying I need a new bride. There was a long pause, a quiet moment between us as Tommy processed what I had just said. His face slowly shifted from disbelief to concern. You're dumping Victoria 3 weeks before the wedding? He asked, the concern now obvious in his voice. No, I said firmly. I'm recognizing that Victoria already dumped everything that matters to me. She just hasn't figured it out yet. Tommy didn't know what to say. He looked down for a moment, his jaw tight. He was my best friend, always looking out for me. But I could see the conflict in his eyes. He didn't want to see me in pain. I know this is crazy, I continued, the words coming out faster now, but I can't marry someone who would treat you, or anyone, like that. It's not just about the photos, Tommy. It's about the fact that she can't see the value in what really matters. Tommy nodded, his face hardening with quiet understanding. I get it, but man, are you sure about this? This is going to be brutal. I took a deep breath. Yeah, I'm sure. It has to be brutal. It's the only way she'll understand the consequences of what she's done. As we sat there in the quiet of the shop, I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. But it wasn't just a weight. It was a burden I was ready to cast off. Victoria had shown me her true colors, and I could no longer pretend it was okay. I'm going to need your help, I said quietly, my mind already working on the plan. Whatever you need, man, Tommy said, his voice filled with conviction. I've got your back. And just like that, I knew what had to be done. It wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't going to let Matthew or Victoria dictate the terms of my life anymore. I had a plan, and it was time to put it into motion. Later that day, I called my sister Rebecca. She was 30, a brilliant event planner who knew everyone in the industry. She was also fiercely protective of Tommy, having been the one to drive him to the hospital after the fire. If there was anyone who could help me turn this around, it was her. Hey, Beeks, I said when she picked up the phone. Hypothetically, how hard would it be to change a few details for the rehearsal dinner? What kind of details? She asked, her voice cautious. Like the bride, I said, letting the silence hang for a moment. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, then she exploded. What did she do? I explained everything to her, how Victoria had suggested replacing Tommy, and how it had shattered everything I thought I knew about her. Okay, Rebecca said, her voice filled with anger. That shallow witch, what do you need? I smiled, the plan already forming in my mind. I need the most beautiful, classy woman you know. Someone who will make Victoria look like she shops at discount stores. Rebecca didn't even hesitate. I know just the person. Remember Natasha from the company party? Former model turned PR exec? She's perfect for this. I could hear the smirk in her voice as she said it. And guess what? Natasha happens to be Tommy's cousin. Victoria never knew because she never bothered to learn about Tommy's family. I couldn't help but laugh. Perfect, call her. I'm all in. As Rebecca made the call, I knew things were already set in motion. The rehearsal dinner was only a few days away, and when Matthew walked into that venue, expecting everything to go as planned, he was going to get the surprise of his life. Part 3. The rehearsal dinner. The night of the rehearsal dinner arrived. I felt like I was living in a movie, the tension heavy in the air as I put on my best suit, the one that always made me feel like I could conquer the world. It was a sharp, black tuxedo, the kind Victoria always said made me look like a leading man. I stared at my reflection for a moment, unsure if I was ready for what was about to happen, but then I remembered Tommy, his face scarred by his past, yet full of pride. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. Tommy was already waiting outside when I walked out. He was dressed sharp too, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet intensity. He gave me a small nod as I stepped into the car, the unspoken understanding between us heavier than words could express. The stakes were high, but we both knew what was at risk. Not just the wedding, but my entire future. Are you sure you're ready for this? Tommy asked, glancing over at me. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied. This is going to be brutal. Tommy chuckled softly. Yeah, for her. We swung by to pick up Natasha, and when she stepped out of the building, I swear the entire atmosphere in the car changed. She was stunning. Natasha had that rare combination of elegance and confidence that made heads turn. She looked like she belonged on a runway, and in that moment, she was the perfect person to make Victoria's shallow ideal of beauty seem pathetic in comparison. "You sure you're okay with this?" I asked her as we drove to the venue. "Are you kidding?" Natasha grinned. "Victoria once told me I was pretty for someone who used to model. Karma delivered first class. I'm just here for the show." I couldn't help but laugh. "Thanks for being a good sport about this." "Don't worry about it," Natasha said, a hint of mischief in her voice. "This is going to be fun." When we arrived at the venue, the staff greeted us warmly, but there was an underlying tension. I had called ahead and made sure the seating chart had been completely redone, with Victoria's name nowhere to be found. The plan was set. Natasha would be sitting in the bride's seat. As the guests began to trickle in, I kept my cool, maintaining the outward appearance of a calm man who just happened to have it all together. My family was already there, of course. They'd known the plan, and they were there to support me, and probably to watch the drama unfold. It wasn't just a family affair. It was a performance, one that was about to have a very public audience. Victoria's family was completely clueless. They mingled and took photos, all the while unaware that they were about to witness the most shocking twist of the evening. At 7:10 p.m., I saw Victoria's car pull up outside through the window. She was laughing with her sister, probably talking about how perfect the night was going to be. She had no idea what was waiting for her. Victoria entered the venue, her white cocktail dress hugging her figure in that way that screamed bride, but not really. She was beaming, her eyes scanning the room for me. When she saw me standing by the head table, a smile tugged at her lips. But then she saw Tommy, standing next to me, and the smile faltered, just for a second. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, and then they fixed on the seat where she was supposed to sit. There, in her place, was Natasha, seated with the corsage meant for the bride, looking every bit the part. The color drained from Victoria's face as she stepped forward, her smile slipping completely. "What? What is she doing here?" Victoria's voice rose, panic creeping into her words. I stood up slowly, my eyes meeting hers. "Oh, Natasha, she's my date." Victoria's confusion only deepened as she took in the whole scene, and I could feel the room go quiet. "Where's my seat?" she asked, her voice now a strained whisper. I took a deep breath. "You don't have one. This is a family and friends event. You're neither." Her eyes flickered toward her mother, Eleanor, who had just entered the room, clearly excited for the rehearsal dinner. "Mom, something's wrong. Come sit down." I stood up, tapping my glass, the sound sharp and commanding in the silence. The room fell into a hush, all eyes on me. I knew this was it. No turning back now. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice steady but laced with a quiet fury. "Thank you for coming to what was supposed to be our rehearsal dinner. There's been a change of plans." Victoria's face twisted in confusion and irritation. She started to step forward, but I raised my hand, signaling her to stop. "There will be no wedding," I continued, my eyes fixed firmly on hers. "I have recently discovered that Victoria and I have fundamentally different values. She believes that physical appearance determines someone's worth. Specifically, she demanded I replace my best man Tommy here because his burn scars would ruin her perfect wedding photos." A sharp gasp echoed through the room. I could see the shock and discomfort on Victoria's face as her world started to crack apart. Her family was silent, unsure of what to say, and I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. Tommy's wife, Lauren, stood up from her seat. She was fuming, her fists clenched. "You can't be serious," she called out, her voice filled with disbelief. "You really said that?" I looked back at Tommy, who gave me a small nod. "I'm saying, Victoria, you're dismissed from my life," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "Your things will be available for pickup tomorrow between 9:00 a.m. and noon. Bring a truck." I could see the blood drain from Victoria's face. She stood frozen for a moment, her hands trembling. The silence in the room was deafening as her world completely fell apart. Part 4. The Aftermath. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. The explosion of emotions at the rehearsal dinner had left everyone in shock, but the fallout from Victoria's actions was just beginning. Victoria, of course, couldn't take it lying down. After all, she was the one who'd always been the center of attention, the one who thrived on her image and the approval of others. But now she was the one being exposed for who she truly was, shallow, manipulative, and cruel. The morning after the dinner, I woke up to a string of missed calls and text messages. Most of them were from my family, checking in, asking if I was okay. Some were from Victoria's side, angry messages from her family, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. but it was the message from her that struck me most. Victoria had posted a lengthy rant on social media, a desperate attempt to make herself look like the victim. She painted a picture of me as some kind of emotionally abusive monster, claiming I had humiliated her for no reason, that I had trapped her in a relationship, and now I was abandoning her over a tiny misunderstanding. The message was filled with venom, and I could almost hear her voice in every word she typed. "You humiliated me, Nathan. You're a pathetic loser. I hope you find someone as perfect as me," the message ended. I didn't bother responding. There was nothing I could say that would make her understand. The woman who had been by my side for so long, who I had thought was my future, was gone, replaced by a person I barely recognized. But it wasn't just her words that stung. It was the fact that she could twist everything around so easily, as if the world would believe her lies. And then, like clockwork, her followers, mostly her friends from her influencer circles, started chiming in, supporting her, calling me every name in the book. The pity posts were endless. It was almost pathetic. As I scrolled through her social media, my finger hovered over the block button, but I didn't press it. I knew she was grasping at straws. This was her last attempt at control. Just then, I got a message from Lauren, Tommy's wife, with a screenshot of Victoria's post. I could see from the look on her face that she was furious, but there was something else in her message. She'd done some digging. Attached to the post was a screenshot of a series of messages from Victoria sent months ago. "Tommy gives me the creeps. Does he have to come to everything? Can't we just do couples things without the burn victim? I'm not shallow, but he makes every photo look like a medical documentary." The words were there in black and white, and it hit me hard. How could I have been so blind? Victoria had never cared about Tommy, about his family, about any of the things that truly mattered. She had only cared about the perfect image, about how things looked to the world, and the moment she didn't get that, she showed her true face. I thought about reaching out to Victoria's family, but I already knew where they stood. They were never going to be on my side. Eleanor had already texted me, apologizing for Victoria's behavior and promising that she would deal with it, but I couldn't bring myself to care about their words anymore. They were just as guilty, in my eyes, for letting Victoria be the way she was. But what truly stung was when I received a call from Richard, Victoria's father. His voice was heavy with regret, and I could hear the tension in his words. "Nathan," he started, his tone careful, almost apologetic, "I need to apologize for what Victoria did. We didn't raise her to be like this." I let out a slow breath. "I appreciate that, Richard. But this is bigger than just her. This is about who she is, and who I let her become in my life." There was a long silence, and I could feel the weight of the conversation. "I'll talk to her," Richard said, his voice laced with a hint of defeat. "But I want you to know we won't be helping her with any legal action if she decides to go that route." "Thanks," I said quietly. I appreciated the sentiment, but at that point, nothing could make this situation right again. The next few days were a blur of calls, messages, and media attention. Victoria's post had gone viral, mostly in the wedding-shaming groups where people were quick to point out her hypocrisy. She had tried to spin the narrative, but the truth had already leaked out, and her followers were starting to question everything she had ever said. And then, like a cherry on top, the photographer who had refunded me after I explained why I was canceling the wedding came forward. He posted a public message, calling out Victoria for her shallow behavior. He wrote, "I've photographed hundreds of weddings. The ugliest thing I've ever seen is a bride who thinks scars determine someone's worth." It was like a domino effect. Each piece of her perfect world came crashing down. The internet, for all its faults, had a way of revealing the truth, and it wasn't kind to her. The next week, I moved my things out of the apartment I had shared with Victoria. The place felt hollow without her, but it also felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I stayed at my brother's house to avoid any confrontation, but Victoria wasn't done yet. She showed up with a U-Haul, her whole family in tow, ready to take what was theirs. It was a mess. Luckily, I had already taken care of everything. I'd cleared it with the landlord to change the locks. When Victoria tried to get inside, I wasn't there, but Mrs. Rodriguez, my nosy but lovely neighbor, filmed the whole thing on her phone. Victoria started screaming that I was stealing from her, but the cops showed up shortly after. They quickly determined that she had no right to be there. Her name wasn't on the lease, and her ID showed a different address. The cops told her she could take only what she could prove was hers. The rest? Already packed up and left with the building manager. The final straw came a few days later when Victoria showed up at my brother's house with her new boyfriend, Chase. He looked like a cheap imitation of a man. A poor man's version of Chris Hemsworth, if you will. He was trying to act tough, puffing out his chest as if that would somehow intimidate me. "So you're the loser who fumbled Victoria?" Chase asked, trying to act like he was the king of the world. I leaned back in my chair and looked him up and down. "I'm the guy who dodged a bullet." Chase's eyes narrowed, and for a moment he seemed unsure of himself. "Whatever," he muttered, clearly uncomfortable in the face of Tommy's looming presence. Tommy had just arrived in his truck, big and solid as ever. As he stepped out, Chase's bravado melted away. Tommy was built like a linebacker, his years of manual labor evident in his strong frame. Chase quickly realized he wasn't the alpha here, and with a sheepish glance, he made his excuses. Victoria, however, wasn't so easily deterred. She stood there, mouth open, as her perfect life came crashing down. "You ruined my life," she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. I didn't flinch. "No, Victoria, you ruined your own life when you decided my best friend's appearance was more important than his character, or mine, or yours." And with that, the curtain came down. Victoria's perfect image was gone.